Hi there. So apparently I messed up trying to upload this before, so I'm going to try it one more time. This video is about bar models, and more to the point, it's about how bar models help kids to figure out what math problems to do. So bar models really just show relationships. They're not actual math problems. Doing a bar model is not doing math, it's figuring out what math to do. So to be able to talk about this, we kind of first need to talk about our operations. And we've got addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Hopefully, we all can kind of remember that addition means that things are increasing, like you got 4 puppies, and then you get a new puppy, now you're up to 5 puppies. It can also just be combining, where you've got 6 people in a group and 8 people in another group, and the 2 groups come together, now you've got 14. You can argue that these are basically the same thing, but they're presented as different in word problems sometimes, so it's good to kind of think of them separately. For subtraction, we've got decreases, like if we've got 3 oranges, and then I eat 1, now I've got 2 oranges. Same thing with comparing. Not everybody thinks of this, but if I say it's 5 miles to my house and 2 miles to the park, and I say how much further is it, that's a subtraction problem, and I take the 5 miles away and the 2 miles away, I subtract them in order to find out that the difference is 3. Multiplication is basically addition when you're going with the same adding over and over again, but it can also be if there's just a whole bunch of groups that are the same size and you're trying to find out a total. Division is when you're taking something and splitting it into groups, and you're trying to find out how big the groups are. Or if you know how big the groups are and you're trying to find out how much fit into a certain total, which basically means you're trying to find out how many groups you can make. Now, how does this go with bar models? It goes with bar models basically because bar models, for what we're doing, kind of come in 2 flavors. It comes in part wholes, and it comes in comparisons. And of comparisons, there's kind of like 2 kinds. So let's take a look at part wholes. When we've got a part whole, all it really means is that we draw a picture to show that there's a total and that there's some parts. And ultimately, this can either tell us that, hey, we need to add. I know 2 parts and I don't know the total, so 2 parts going together tells us to add, or it tells us to subtract. Maybe I've got the total and one of the parts, but I don't know the other part, so I'd subtract those in order to find the missing part. It could tell us multiplication if we know that there's a whole bunch of parts that are all the same. It could even tell us division if we know that there's a total and we know how much a group is, but we don't know how many groups there are. Or if we know how many groups there are, but we don't know how big each one is. We're not starting with part wholes, we're actually starting with comparisons, but we'll be using these as we go. Now, comparisons can kind of be shown in 2 ways. The first way it can be shown is if you just say, hey, I've got a first category A and a second category B, and one's bigger than the other. If I know that one's bigger than the other, there's a couple of things I can find out. First of all, I can find out there's a total. Sometimes the math problem will either tell us there's a total, or it'll ask us for the total. And if it's asking us for the total, it has to tell us both of these things, or at least let us figure them out. On the other hand, it might say something like, here's a total, and this category has this much. How big is the other category? You could even think of that as a part whole. Where it's useful, though, to actually draw that as a comparison is when they start saying things like, this category is a little bit bigger than the other category. Maybe they don't tell you either of the 2. What they do tell you is maybe Alex has this many stickers, maybe 5, and maybe Bob has this many stickers. And you don't know how many there are, but it's 3 more. If they tell you there's 13, and you know that Bob has 3 more than Alex, then you can take away Bob's 3, so take away those 3, and take away that down to 10. Now you've got 2 sections that are basically the same size, and you can take the 10 that are left over and split it up for those 2 sections, 5 and 5. Now you know that Bob has 8, and now you know that Alex has 5. Another way they might do comparisons is instead of just saying one thing is a little bit bigger than another thing, wow, that's really sloppy. They might say that Bob has 3 times more than Alex, or 2 times more, or 5 times more, or whatever. Once they've told you that, they might not tell you how many either of them have. They might just tell you the total. But if you know the total, and you know that Bob has 3 times more than Alex, then you can say, hey, that means Bob gets 1, 2, 3 boxes. Alex only gets 1 box because Bob is 3 times bigger. That means there's a total of 4 boxes to fill. So if I take my total and divide it by 4, I know what goes in each box, and therefore I know what Alex has, and I know, once I add or multiply those, what Bob has. Now that's just a super quick overview, and it's also really simplified in comparison to what we're doing. But the main things you need to understand are that there are part-part wholes, and the main relationships they will show are addition, because you need to find out a total, or subtraction, because they tell you a total in a part and you're trying to find out another part. There's comparisons, where either you know one's a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, and you can find a total with that, or you can find out how big either of the parts are. And then there's a comparison where they actually say one is 2 or 3 or 4 times bigger, and you give each of them boxes to kind of show that relationship. And once you do that, you can figure out you should do a division problem or a multiplication problem to figure out what you want based on the info they give you in the math problem. All right, so hopefully that gives you a quick overview of bar models. I'm going to try and upload this, and then I am going to do another video that is pertinent to tonight's homework.